So earlier this year, both on this show and at The Intercept, we reported that Shontel Brown, who is Nina Turner's opponent in a special election that's upcoming, was low-key pleading with two super PACs to jump into her race on her behalf. That was an ethically dubious thing to do, quasi-legal, but it appears to have worked. Those super PACs have jumped into the race. A voter from Ohio yesterday sent me the following mailer that is going out, sponsored by Democratic Majority for Israel PAC, DMFI PAC. It is attempting to make the claim that Nina Turner is against universal health care and against raising the minimum wage. There's no evidence for that at all. It's a lie.
Right.
What they are using is that she voted against the Democratic platform because it didn't go far enough. It didn't include Medicare for all. The platform actually does not include universal health care. So even on their extraordinarily clever approach, it's still a lie. Nina Turner, responding to my post, posted this.
I do accept Sister Mary Kay's amendment to my amendment and am vitally proud that the Democratic Party is affirming that the federal minimum wage should be $15 an hour.
So that is Nina Turner at the 2016 Democratic National Convention working with Mary Kay Henry of the SEIU to insert into the Democratic Party platform a $15 minimum wage. So not only is it wrong, it's just flagrantly, wildly 180 degrees wrong. Does this stuff happen in Republican special elections, Republican primaries?
Yeah, this is what people would and politicians would lament, laughably so, as politics as usual. The people making these attacks and leveling that charge against Nina Turner know that it's BS. They know that this is nonsense. They know that there's a mountain of evidence that it's wrong. What they're doing is basically just like desperately scraping for things that they think will help undermine her, make her look unreliable, make her look like a hypocrite or a liar. And so they're just clinging to these things. They're looking for scraps at this point, and that's what's happening. That's what always happens late in these sort of primary contests, is they go looking for their scraps. That's exactly what this is. They don't believe it themselves because it is obviously just an illusory sort of like grasping for straws type of attack. But it's one of those things that people just absolutely despise about the political machine. I don't know how you ever get rid of something like that.
I wonder if this one will be both useless and potentially backfire, because I don't think, voters in this district know Nina Turner. She's been a figure there for a very long time, predating her work for the Bernie Sanders campaign. Nobody there is going to believe that she's against raising the minimum wage and against universal health care. So then all it does is put a spotlight on the attack ad, and then you start to ask the question, wait a minute, what is this DMFI PAC? And why are they getting in on behalf of Shontel Brown? And then if they do any Googling, they will see that she either crossed ethical lines or came right up against them in the way, and we talked about this earlier, in a radar, in the way that she basically asked for a super PAC to get in to help her, which she did it publicly, which her lawyers would argue makes it legal, but it certainly cuts against the spirit of campaign finance reform. And this is a Democratic primary where Democratic voters are supposed to believe in that. Yeah,
it's the legal exploitation of a loophole in campaign finance laws. And I think, the question then becomes amplifying that versus amplifying the attack. And in these local elections, that's where money comes into play. So I think if you explained this to a primary voter, they would see it as shady, sort of politics as usual, cutting against the spirit of campaign finance laws and just kind of a nonsense, baseless attack. And so, I think if you explain that to people, sure, but if you have so much money pouring in and amplifying this message, primary voters are normal people. They don't have the, sad jobs that we do where we sit around tracking these things and trying to parse through them and trying to sort of like weed through political regulations and campaign finance laws. And so that's where I think money comes into play. Now, what's interesting is we've covered several times in this program that money has actually come into Nina Turner whenever Shontel Brown's allies sort of launch one of these bad faith establishment attacks on her. So that could very well be the effect of this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I suspect that she'll raise $50,000 to $100,000
off this
as a result of this. And this is the same PAC that that went in to the Jamal Brown Elliott Bowman primary, and Eliot Engel had to distance himself from the attacks because they were so aggressive and so misleading. They went after Jamal Bowman for some like unpaid tax lien from like 10 years earlier or something, and so this may end up being something that Shontel Brown actually has to distance herself from as well because it's so utterly misleading. And these firms know what they're doing. The three firms that are actually doing the work for DMFI PAC are all major DCCC firms. It's Sage Media, it's Trilogy, and it's Sina Kozar. Sina Kozar is run by Dan Sina, who was the 2018 executive director of DCCC. The other two do a ton of work for the DCCC. So this is very much coming from the establishment wing of the party, and DMFI's funders are all some of the richest people in the country.
Well, and here's what Nina Turner can do is turn around and say, look at the connections between this attack and the Democratic establishment, and that's where you raise money. That's where you bring small dollar donors in who say that's BS. This is just total establishment politics trying to undermine a grassroots candidate. And so, I mean, if anything, that does help her. The question I think still comes down to, can Shontel Brown's allies amplify this nonsense message with their money? And hey, I mean, that's why they're doing it. They know that if they can just find that scrap, that thread, and they can amplify it and boost that message, they can trick people.
Yep. No, we'll see. They'll have endless money to do it. But doesn't this also undermine the case that they would try to make? If they do beat Nina Turner with these millions of dollars, they will say, see, look, told you that the progressive messaging doesn't work in these primaries, and this isn't what people wanted. Yet they ran their campaign saying she wasn't progressive enough, saying she wasn't for a $15 minimum wage, saying she wasn't for universal health care. So they're basically granting the premise that the voters want progressives. But they're trying to just sneak somebody in instead. It's
too cute by half, but I think that's probably the most important part, is that they are granting the premise. So next time the people of the D-Trip turn around and say you can't run on M4A, you say, well, listen to what you're doing over here. Look at how you accepted this premise in order to attack Nina Turner. And what they would say is, like, they're just trying to make her look like a hypocrite. They're trying to undercut her credibility. But in reality, they're absolutely granting the premise. And I think that is probably the biggest takeaway.
So a progressive wins that either way. A fake one or a real one.
Well done, D-Trip.
And we will tell you what America's thinking next.